We've covered a lot of ground throughout the program today. More to come as well. After the bombs from the Supreme Court of the United States and the repealing of Roe v. Wade last year, the shutting down of EPA regulations last year, the affirmative action, the rescinding of affirmative action this year, the canceling of the student loan forgiveness program, and the left is in an absolute tizzy, my friends.
We're all going to die because of you!
To talk about some of that and more, as we had to bring him on the program to talk about these issues and what it leads up to into the budgetary discussions for going into 2024. Can we have a semi-reasonable budget? And can we get this economy back on track? Because while the Biden administration seems to be touting the, 4% inflation, the best that we've seen here, it's still double what it was under the Trump administration going into that last session and working its way up to 7, 8, 9% across the nation. We're now back down to 4, which they're saying, hey, good job. We did something now. We have been successful, my friends.
We did it. We did it. We did it. Yay!
But the question is, has it been as successful as what they're telling us? On the line with us, he's, I know, a great guest on the program here for Todd Starnes frequently. He's also my personal congressman in the 4th Congressional District here in the state of Kansas, and a great friend as we've had him on the radio show for years and years. It's Congressman Estes from the 4th District. Congressman, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Andy. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, it's so good to talk to you, especially here on the Todd Starnes program. The claim from Karine Jean-Pierre and the Biden administration saying that inflation's down to 4%, the best that it's probably going to get, and the economy's back on track. We've created 10 million jobs. We were able to get this stuff back on track now that we've passed this debt ceiling bill from just last month. Is this true, or is the economy doing as well as what they're telling us? Because I don't know about you, but I tried to go out and buy some fireworks and buy some meat for the weekend and buy some gas to put it in my tank. And I still think things are a little bit more expensive than what they were back in the day.
Things really are. They're not really telling the whole story. They're trying to cherry pick numbers and indicate that things are looking better. I mean, when they say that inflation's only gone up 4% in the last year, that just means it's gone up 4% on top of the 9% that it did the year before. So, in all total, since President Biden took office, prices are up 15.5% for the exact same things at the grocery store, the exact same rent, the exact same, house or car that you buy. It's up 15% more. And Americans are seeing through this. Nearly 70% of Americans are saying the economy's poor or bad. So, Bidenomics is a bad thing. And we're suffering through this. You can see it in gas prices. I mean, that's probably one of the better things that we see at the pump every day. And it's up almost over 50% from when President Biden took office. And it's down from Putin's invasion, but it's still up from Biden. So we could handle the price increase due to Putin, but we can't handle Biden's attack on an energy-independent America.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned how we measure this inflation, because that has been a point I don't think people really put hand in hand or grasp until we really lay that out, is that when we look at inflation, and correct me if I'm wrong, we look at it on a year-over-year basis. So at this time last year, if we were at 7, 8%, now we're only at 4%. That's not 4% from the original base from 3, 4, 5 years ago when we saw the 9% increase. That's on top of the 9% we had seen last year. So really, since the Trump administration now to the Biden administration, like you said, we're sitting at almost 15% inflation for the last 3 years.
That's right. It's over 15%, and it's a cumulative impact. I mean, they try to paint this picture that inflation's down, which makes it sound like a good thing, but it just means that their prices are continuing to impact and add up and cumulative impact on all of us. And it's a struggle for Americans, and Americans are seeing through this false story that they're talking about Bidenomics, and so it's going to be a continuous problem as we try to work through. In another month, parents will be looking at their kids going back to school and having to buy school supplies and new clothes, and the impact that's going to be on that. And the Biden administration just doesn't get it. They try to put this positive spin out there when it's not the truth at all. And so we're trying to talk about it as much as we can about the real impact of that 15.5% in terms of buying the same amount of goods.
Yeah, well, and it's very easy to do because while we go into an off-election year, but as we're trying to gear up and prepare the Republican Party for major elections next year, all we have to do is just get out of the way and let them shoot themselves in the foot by trying to say how great the economy is. I mean, I love when CNBC comes out and says this post-COVID.
To me, we have the strongest economy perhaps I have ever seen.
I mean, that's the lie they try to promote. I got to pick your brain, though, real quick, Congressman, on some of the SCOTUS rulings that came out at the end of last week, especially the student loan forgiveness program. I know we are trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars in debt as a nation. They wanted to do this just forgiveness, just consume it all at the federal level. I don't know how we could have afforded such a thing, so I'm glad the Supreme Court shot this down. But now he's trying to push this Higher Education Act to do it for, quote-unquote, special circumstances, for the air quotes for our radio listeners. What does that mean, and what's the new conversation now with trying to absorb more debt when we're trying to get things in balance that we have right now?
Yeah, the disheartening thing about this is that they try to mask it with a nice-sounding word of debt forgiveness. You know, but it's not debt forgiveness. It's debt being transferred to other taxpayers. And President Biden ignored the Constitution, ignored the law in terms of his scheme to try to transfer this debt on the other taxpayers that have to pay off. I mean, just trying to use his dictatorial powers to go through that. And what the numbers showed is that the top 13, there were only 13% of Americans that had outstanding student debt, and they were the higher income folks, and they were expecting the middle class to pay off their taxes. And I noticed there was a story at the end of last week where one former New York State senator was complaining about her student loan debt, and yet just last year bought $1 million house. So basically they want taxpayers in Kansas to pay their student loan debt so that they can afford their $1 million house, and that's just not right.
Yeah, well, then they try to play the game, of course, the political game of saying that Republicans only care about the rich people because, well, we forgave the PPP loans during COVID, but we're not relieving the $20,000, $10,000 of student loan debt for just average Americans. When, Congressman, I don't remember the fine line print on my student loan contract, but I don't remember it saying that it would be forgiven under these circumstances. I do remember the PPP loan saying that if you spent that money on, like, keeping employees during the pandemic, that we wouldn't have to pay those back. A little bit different circumstances there, aren't they?
But it really is, and they're really distorting the facts again. I mean, the Paycheck Protection Program was designed to help keep middle-class Americans in jobs and not be unemployed. And that was the whole intention there. So now they're coming back and saying, "Oh, those loans are for the rich people." They weren't. They were designed for, you know, the average middle class to be able to keep their jobs instead of having to go on unemployment. And what they're not saying is that there's only 13%, and it's a wealthy that have the student loans that would be given this debt transfer to other taxpayers who maybe worked their way through college, or maybe had multiple jobs, or maybe took longer time to get their degree because they didn't want to go in debt. They were fiscally responsible, and now they're trying to come back and say, well, somebody needs to pay off my debt because I want a freebie, and that's just not right.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous. Talk with Congressman Ron Estes from the 4th District of Kansas, my congressman here in the Wichita, Kansas area. Let's shift gears a little bit. You're on the Ways and Means Committee. Obviously, been working on budgetary issues. Now that we have enough money to get through this year and go into the next fiscal year, how is this process looking? We've talked about this, you and I have for years, on the 12 appropriation bills. For those that don't know how the budget works, we're not supposed to pass a major just omnibus package, pass it to see what's in it. We're supposed to have 12 appropriations bills. This is all for discretionary spending. That's supposed to look at issues. Where can we fund more? Where can we trim? Where can we consolidate? Where can we do better? And we haven't had that since the Obama years. Congressman, do we have the hope of actually having a decent federal budget this coming year?
Well, and actually, the 12 appropriations bills haven't passed even long before the Obama administration. It's just become the way of doing things in Washington, and we're taking a different approach this year. And I know that the debt ceiling, the debt limit bill that was passed saved some money, but now we've come back, and as we're working on appropriations bills for next fiscal year, and the 12 bills to cover the different parts of government, whether it's the agriculture department, whether it's the energy department, whether it's defense, each of those are tied to one of those 12 bills. We're looking at let's use the fiscal 2022 numbers as our appropriation numbers. So we're working on that in the House of Representatives, and the different subcommittees on the Appropriations Committee are going through their particular items and responsibilities. So when we get back after July 4th holiday, we'll be diving deep into getting those appropriations bills passed out of the House of Representatives and get over to the Senate so we can go through the process back and forth and come up with a fiscal 24 budget. We've got to start slowing down the rate of spending. That's our problem. We've seen such an explosion of spending, and President Biden didn't do any favors with the budget he proposed. He proposed increasing the deficit by $17 trillion over the next 10 years, primarily by just increasing spending. And the whole problem with that is, we, like you said, we're over $32 trillion in debt now. And we can't leave that debt on our grandchildren and great-grandchildren to pay off just to support the lifestyle that people want to live today.
Yeah, well, that is very true. Well, the hardest part about all this is that you guys primarily focus on that discretionary spending. There's a whole nother 50, 55, 60% of the federal budget that's the mandatory spending that we're not allowed to touch. Now, I had seen a headline earlier today from the New York Times saying the conservatives are trying to push for the largest deep cuts in spending in the history of this country, and they're trying to overturn our economy and our budget. And they're freaking out over these cuts you guys are trying to propose. Is there a chance that we can actually touch and look at this mandatory spending category and get some of these social programs in order for us to, like you said, start decreasing that spending limit?
You're right. I mean, typically we talk about the 12 appropriations bills, and that's discretionary spending, which is less than a third of the total spending of the federal government on any given year. We've got to start making some serious discussions. Everybody knows that Social Security Trust Fund is going to run down to zero by 2034. But there's so many people in the political arena that want to demagogue about it, and they say, well, don't do anything about it and put it off, and because they'll attack you for trying to solve a problem that we know is out there, and we just got to address it. So we've got to be smart and start thinking and looking ahead. I mean, that's one of the things that rarely happens in government, is solving problems, at least at the federal level, solving problems before they're absolute last minute. And we've got to start focusing on some of these major spending programs that I call them automatic spending programs that deal with a lot of programs that happen either because of income levels or because of enrollment. And it's the sooner we start focusing on this, the simpler it'll be to solve some of these problems if we just take the political will to do it.
That's what we got to do. It's the political will, and it's very difficult. But it's step by step. You guys are working on it, and I know you've been battling hard and strong up there in Washington, D.C. It's Congressman Ron Estes from the 4th District of Kansas right here in my home front, my congressman. And it's great to get you on the Todd Starnes radio program, my friend. We're out of time, but let's do it again here real soon, brother.
Well, great. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate being on Todd Starnes today.
Hey, absolutely appreciate it. That's Congressman Ron Estes right there on the Patriot Mobile Newsmaker hotlines. We appreciate his time very, very much coming on, giving us an update, what we get to look forward to with budgetary geeking out conversations out of Washington, D.C. Got to take a break, right? Lots more coming up right here on the Todd Starnes radio program.